All right. So now we are on to our use cases and the education session for this week. And yeah, I would like to introduce Marc Petit from Epic Games. He's a renowned expert in the world of computer graphics and animation. With over decades of experience in the industry, he has played a significant role in the development of several groundbreaking software and technologies. He's the VP of Unreal ecosystem at Epic. He's also the co-chair of the Core 3D Asset Interoperability Domain Working Group and many others. So I will ask Marc to walk us through his background. Yeah, Marc, I gave you access to share the deck as well, so feel free to take control.
Okay, let's see if it works. It does. Well, you covered that. Thank you, Dino, for having me. Thank you, everybody. It's a bit early for me, so I had coffee, so I'll try to be on the ball. So what I'm going to give you, so I'm here to represent the point of view of the and to share the work that we're doing in the domain working group on asset interoperability using USD and glTF. But I want to share some of my personal thinkings as well on the topic of character, because it's been something that I've been passionate about and working a lot. During my 11 years at Autodesk, portable characters was always a big topic. It's been something that has been worked on quite a bit. And the topic of avatar is a very, very specific one, because it's not just like, trying to solve the problem of exchanging drivable cars. I mean, it's a complex problem, and exchanging drivable cars is likely to be just a technical problem. When you think about avatar, it's very different, because avatar are going to be the way users express themselves in the metaverse. And therefore, they have a very, very, very high emotional value for users and will be important. As you know, the digital parts of our lives is growing. And so how we represent ourselves in the digital world is going to be important. And the other part of it is that, and it's the guy who's selling, a few $1 billion worth of skin, also talking to you today, because the Fortnite business model is entirely based on cosmetics. It's based on self-expression. You cannot buy anything that changes the battle royale game. Spend $1 million on Fortnite to win a battle royale at all. But all those skins, all those emotes are the way you express yourself, and the bedrock of the economical model of the game. We chose that we could have chosen, to spy on you and sell your data to advertiser. We decided not to do that. And we believe that those kind of economic models and monetization strategy around avatars could go on. If you remember, the presentation of Horizon World, the only thing that was dubbed a store by Zuckerberg was the avatar store. Everything, So it's likely to be a part of platforms that's, it's at least likely to be fully open. I mean, let's put it this way. Because of the economics are going to be attached to those. So that's one thing I think is important to keep in mind. The other thing is it's been a research topic for quite a while. Are we fighting for the control here? Or is it me? Okay, it could be me. So as I said, it's been a topic that's been looked at for a long time. In film and visual effects, motion capture has always been interesting. So you would capture a lot of character motion and have to move it into a DCC package. In games, there's always need to move characters around. So, back at Autodesk, with Human IK, we carved out from Motion Builder, was called Filmbox at the time, the FBX file format, and then first thing we built on top of it was the Human IK character representation, and that has, to this day, still is some sort of de facto standard in mocap, and Mixamo is still alive. It's a character library that was purchased by Adobe, animation library, and it still works. And the reason why it still works, it's a standalone DCC independent character animation library. It's because there was some sort of de facto standard to represent the characters, the HIK skeleton, and to move around the animation through FBX with skinning. So it's heavily used to this day. So it's something that you want to factor in. And the other thing is about animation. I had, all the way back to Softimage, a lot of it's always difficult to exchange animation because you never know what you're talking about. For example, if you want to create an animation system like we have in Twinmotion, when you add characters to a scene, you can tell a crowd of characters to walk around a certain path, and it's very easy to do, actually, to control. But if you wanted one of those characters to wave, when you want him to wave, it would be impossible because we do not offer that level of control. On the contrary, there are systems that offer a very low level control, but still, skeletons, you cannot address individual vertices, or meta-human, you cannot, you can control shapes, but you're not given full control over the geometry, which is the case of a system like Unreal Engine or Maya, where you can go all the way down to the vertex. So the level of control that you want to give over a character, you need to be very clear on what you want users to be able to do, because the complexity of the tools is exponential from that. It was super easy to do global control. If you allow people to edit the nitty-gritty guts of a character, it becomes the tooling becomes incredibly complex, and therefore what it means is there is an expectation of quality around characters. Is the Irma self-expression, characters are expected, to have realistic facial animation, even though they're non-human. I mean, that's the thing about photorealism that's important to understand, is it's the thing that the brain understands. So it's very important. Like the Navis in Avatar, they're not humans by any stretch of the imagination, but the way their faces move is human-like, and therefore we can understand their facial expressions. And so that's the thing about the photorealism. It's actually very important so that your design is efficient. So the bar is getting higher in terms of what people expect from using characters to convey complex emotional states. It was a few years back the hallmark of a few high-end studios, but using machine learning technology, and the meta-human is an example. It's not the only one. There's techniques to do that very, very efficiently. So the bar in terms of animation is getting higher, and we'll see people, because it's a social medium, gaze tracking, facial expressions, body language, therefore a very, very subtle set of characteristics, for animation, like for facial animation, for body animation, are going to be a strong requirement. So it's going to be fun. So when we, at the beginning of the Metaverse Standard Forum, we felt that one of our impetus to create the forum was said, hey, we're seeing a lot of goodwill. A lot of people are doing some great stuff like USD or glTF or X3D or a number of other things, but they're clearly not talking to each other because they are solving the problems in slightly different ways, and they're offering solutions that are slightly different, which is interesting because the slightly is annoying. You could say, hey, what's the problem? It was mostly the same. Well, because it's not mostly, because it's mostly not exactly the same, you're always at risk of losing time and losing information in the process. And so we decided to offer domain working groups to tackle the problem of interoperability. Why does it say USD and glTF? Because at the time we had so many people saying, "Hey, I have this format, and we decided to drive the conversation efficiently and not run a super sophisticated, equalitarian democratic process, which will still have this us today argue about the benefits of one side to other. We decided to focus on the two projects that we felt has the most impact on the industry. But what we're trying to do, our hope, it's not hidden, we try to impact all formats. And I'll tell you why, how we're going to do this in a minute. So you can see the charter on the MSF portal. It's just everything in the Metaverse Standard Forum. It's open, it's free, you're happy to join. We run meetings every 2 weeks. Not at that time of day, though. I apologize for that. And what was interesting is we were able to line up some of the big guys in the industry, the people who can contribute an informed point of view to the decisions, but also go back to their teams and implement the decisions so that we're actually, having a pragmatic short-term impact. I don't know if you saw last week the announcement between Adobe and Autodesk around materials. I mean, this is a direct result of what we're trying to do when those two guys agree and say, okay, fine, we'll do the same. We'll have the same Uber shader. That was the result of some of those conversations and the momentum that there is behind. And you have this you're gonna operate in this world too. At the Metaverse Standard Forum, one thing we didn't want to become is yet another SDO and create yet another standard, because that's not the problem. There are a gazillion amount of standards. I mean, look at the standard register effort. They're still working. We're trying to understand all of the available standards in the Metaverse. There's a galaxy of standards available. And the forum is putting everyone together. And the Metaverse is putting everyone together. So organizations that thought they would never have to care about each other are all going to meet on this new version of the internet that's 3D enabled. And so the interconnectivity between standards is likely to become a bigger problem. And then, so there are gazillion standards and they don't really talk to each other. So that's why we created this thing called the forum. And so in our working group, that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying, to get the people to talk and to agree on the recipes. We're not interested in the politics or the mechanics of developing standards, you have proper standards like glTF, but you also have de facto standard through open source like USD. And so, whether USD will become a standard is a very interesting conversation, but that's not our conversation. We certainly all have an opinion on what should happen with USD and whether it should stay behind, in the hands of Disney lawyers or not. But that's not the point. We never wanted to have this conversation. What the conversation we wanted to have is like, whatever USD represents needs to be the same underlying representation or definition as what glTF and every other is doing. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to go through the stack, and over the past 30 years of computer graphics, we've developed a number of things, and one by one, the ambition is to say, okay, what's the thing that's working? Is it ready to be commoditized or standardized or canonicized, whatever term you want to agree? And then let's agree on the recipe, like a shader. Let's agree on the underlying shading equation, and then everybody goes off in their open source library or open standard and implements it with their process the way they want. But the result is lossless interoperability. We're not arguing that everybody should use the same. What we're arguing is people should use things that can be converted into each other, and not without human intervention, because that's what makes things expensive. So we have the cloud now, and so That's something very important to understand. It's not about trying to tell Kronos how to write a shader in glTF and trying to tell USD to do the same. That's not the same. It's about picking a rendering equation, say, hey, you guys need to both implement that. And if you do so, you're going to get lossless interoperability. And that's really the extent of our mandate. And of course, we'll support that with open source code to demonstrate that it works. But fundamentally, our deliverable is a recipe book to create that interoperable content, with the hope that it makes it into standards, of course. So what are we working on? As I said, in my mind, it's a decade, so it's a 10-year-long effort. As I said, we're 30 years into computer graphics. There's a lot of pent-up work. We've never come together as an industry to say, hey, we got to do the same. The metaverse forces us to think about that. And so geometry is something that's very complex because everybody attach a bunch of other things to geometry. So, and geometry is relatively well understood. So we kind of passed on working on geometry, but the first things we're trying to do when we felt there was an effort was around materials. So, in 2012, Disney published a research paper on, what would be a good rendering equation. And ever since, for the past 10 years, everybody has been implementing variations of that paper. And so material is really a case where things are mostly the same, but not exactly the same. And there is no guarantee that you can convert one into the other. So that's what we're doing. So we asked Jonathan Stone from Lucasfilm, who has been leading the Material X open source project as part of the Academy Software Foundation. And we've asked Ben Houston, the CTO of ThreeKit, who has been a long-time contributor to Kronos, to basically, start a thread on materials and lead conversation with all stakeholders to make sure that, we basically have a proposal of what could be a shared material representation, and then using this open source Material X as a way to create a canonical representation. So that's what's happening. We hope in the next few weeks we have a proposal so that the PBR model in glTF and the preview surface shader in USD converge on a similar representation. You heard Autodesk and Adobe announcing last week that they're aligning their shaders. Epic is on substrate, their new shading technology, and we're actually looking at aligning with what Autodesk and Adobe have done. And so we think that, that one was a relatively low-hanging fruit. We could have a solution within a few weeks or a few months by SIGGRAPH, I think, at the latest. And that's going to be huge, so that you can reliably transfer PBR shaders with subsurface scattering. If you want to do human skin, so it's something you probably want to have for character. The other part, what we felt that there was, a path to a solution relatively quickly was around rigid body physics, not the solving, just the expression of a problem. The problem of physics hasn't changed in the past 150 years, so there is no reason why we should not agree on the way to describe a complex physics systems. That's important because that could be the basis of a lot of rigging and a lot of simulation work. And again, we reached out to some of the folks who have, made a mark in that industry. The guy who created physics, Adam Worawansky, he's in Switzerland, in Europe, and Ian from Microsoft's Havoc, who is in Ireland, and NVIDIA, Pixar, and Apple had already agreed on physics extension to USD. And there was a lot of conversation at around glTF and proposal driven by Microsoft. So we felt that since the glTF work is not definite right now, it was the right time to get together and to agree on a way to represent a complex rigid body physics system. So those guys have only started to work. We still make sure that we have all the right people. You know, there's many more physics engines. You got a lot of specialty physics engines in the simulation space, and you know, and then you've got other physics, open source physics engine, and then you have things like proprietary physics engine like Apex Chaos physics system. So we're making sure we're talking to everybody, and then the goal is going to be to basically take you know, look at the USD physics extension, look at what Microsoft's proposing, and do a little bit of work, and you know, take this as a base, and then reach out to the other guys, say, hey, would this work for all of you if we were to represent a system like this? And you know, it's modest. It's only rigid body physics. You know, that it would not tackle the problems of flesh or our muscle simulation that will need for characters, but you know, one step at a time. You eat an elephant one mouthful at a time, and that's what we're trying to do in the group, is really pick up topic that's going to create a positive outcome and a good experience for the participants, so that people come back. Because you know, we all have a day job. Nobody wakes up in the morning saying, hey, I'm going to spend a lot of time creating standards. It's just, you know, it's important, but it's not, you know, it's a lot of a complex work and a lot of time. So we want to make sure that there is an outcome. So what next? The thing we're discussing, animation curves. Guys, 30 years we've been using animation curve. Nobody uses the same. This is crazy. I think it's about time. Autodesk has put out Animex. The Pixar guy think it's not enough. So, but I think we need to discuss and find a solution for animation curves. I mentioned FBX, something I've been very much involved with in the past. I think there's a lot of nitty-gritty problems we solve in FBX, like, you know, if you represent your aperture in a horizontal angle, or your aperture for a camera's virtual angles, you know, sometimes there is no mathematical formula to go from one to the next, especially. So we have learned to, you know, so there is like 10 or 15 years worth of knowledge to harvest about how you convey animation data. So the FBX format as of itself, because it's not an open source format, may not be part of the future. But it's, you know, it's not a reason to ignore all of the work and all of the concepts that have been proven by this. So I'm hopeful, not a decision made by the working group, opinion of Marc Petit. I'm hopeful that, you know, we start tackling, you know, the transport of animation data, especially if we have standardized animation curves. And then also take stock of what I was mentioning around, you know, the whole mocap industry has standardized on a certain way to convey a skeletal animation system for bipeds and quadrupeds, and we should not ignore that. And you know, that's something that we should tackle, and that's obviously an area of quote unquote overlap. So between what you could be doing, if you think about standardizing character, you'll be building on top of those formats, and those formats may already you know, provide services to support that. The other thing we might be looking at is subdivision surfaces. I think it's a nice way to do LODs. It's the one implicit surface representation that is, you know, we know how to texture, we know how to deform. It used to be stressful for glTF to think about subdivision surfaces because of the GPU cost of those things, but you know, with the hardware being what it is, even on phones, it could be an interesting one. It's certainly something interesting to look at also from a character perspective, again, to implement LODs, and with a, you know, making sure that every platform gets, you know, can render a representation to the best of its ability. Procedural content is a big topic, you know, especially at the days of generative AI. And then how you integrate things like NERF and neural rendering. I don't think it's ready for that conversation for standardization, but certainly you'd like to have a way to augment your standard representation with whatever crazy procedural stuff that may be invented in the next 10 or 15 years. Deformers at the core of, this is basic building block for character and facial animation, for muscle systems and facial deformations, same for rigging and skinning, hair for grooms. So there's a lot of things that are on the docket just to cater to the need of the film and the games industry as well. One thing that's two topics that are being discussed but there is no conclusion is whether we should attempt and creating a shared behavioral framework for basic logic and interactive. We're not talking Call of Duty here. We're talking like, hey, can we get to a self-contained car configurator in glTF, for example? And if we were to do that, should not be the same framework for everybody. So there's a lot of work that has happened in the glTF space. It's not a need that you'd find too much in the film industry, but I think there would be value in creating something that's relatively simple to so that you kind of liberate basic interactive content until you figure out more sophisticated scripting and procedural systems. I mean, the other thing about our conversation is we are very open, but we all share a belief that USD has proven to be a good framework. USD is not a standard, as I said, but what the USD library from Pixar has showed us is there is a standardized way that's efficient and work in real time to do scene compositing and layering. If you go back to the early days of the internet, the reason why the internet works is because you had this HTML thing that would allow it to link text and images. It was not dictating the format of those images or those videos because you had plugins, remember, browser plugins and all that good stuff. But it was working. I mean, you could create an HTML page with all kind of video and image formats. You never dictated, whether it's JPEG or Targa or TIFF or PNG. And same for video. Anybody could write their own video format in their video plugin. But it's still allowed to exchange, the structure of the document, and you had the basic notion of hypertext becoming transportable. Most of us in the working group, that's what's got us together as well. We believe that we look into USD and we see a good base to create that basic interoperability and exchangeability of virtual world without getting into, without getting into the assets format. I mean, you can have, and NVIDIA has demonstrated last year at SIGGRAPH, you can have a USD file that references a lot of glTFs, and that's a very, very valid composition and way to work. And there's a lot of merit to that workflow. So, but you need one, you can have, a Gaussian standards formats for geometries and whatever, and characters and everything. It's okay because can write a file plugin to support them, but there should be only one way to put that stuff together. And our opinion, and again, it's just an opinion, and we're advocates for that, so we're very careful. We're not going to be the one doing anything about it. We're just going to talk about it. We think that what we see in USD should be turned somehow, somewhere into a standardized way to layer and compose a 3D world, so that we have the equivalent of HTML for virtual worlds and interactive experiences. Now, the World Wide Web took off on initially HTML, and then there was a need for a scripting language. There was a big battle, and JavaScript ended up working. Who would have predicted that JavaScript would win the battle? I mean, and it's the same here. There's an HTML. Maybe we can do, USD is that foundation. What is going to be a proper scripting language for the metaverse? We do not know that today. And so that's why what we're proposing is that battle needs to pan out, because it's about innovation. We're not, you don't want to dictate top down who's going to be the winner. We're not in the business. Nobody's a kingmaker to decide which is going to work. It's the users, and people will vote with their usage. That's going to design. But still, all of this to say that if you want to have a car configurator, you probably wouldn't want to wait for this battle to pan out and to understand, what the scripting is going to be in the metaverse. So that's why I personally think it's a good idea to design a small scope framework for logic and interactivity that's standardized, again, so that you can convey the basic, cater to the basic workflows. So that's again, it's going to be an exercise in being limited in scope and making sure you're not trying to boil the ocean and go all the way to Fortnite or Call of Duty with your system. But it's probably something that's in scope with the mandate of the group that we're having, and there's a few members very, very passionate about it. The other thing is we are working with the MPEG organization, about MPEG-I, to the transmission of 3D scenes and up encoding and everything. So right now we're aware of one effort from the MPEG organization as part of ISO and all of that. So we are, we could be working together with them to make sure that there is encoding happening. The other thing about what trying to do in the working group, and that's I want to be clear about, is there is no expectation, like if you create a standard representation of an interactive experience. So let's take a car configurator, for example. Everybody loves cars, easy to understand. It's not it's a passionate topic. The expectation is not everybody, and you can represent a standardized car configurator in USD with the logic and all of the experience and the content and the geometry. The expectation is not, and you represent that, let's say, in some sort of extended USD representation. The expectation is not that everybody is going to read that representation and render it in real time. That would be foolish, because every runtime capability, every runtime platform has a different set of capabilities. If you look at, Unreal versus Unity versus Roblox versus Fortnite, you will, versus Minecraft versus PUBG, every time you want to run something into a real-time systems, you need to conform the content to make sure that it performs optimally. This process is called cooking or baking or everything. So our goal, is more about making sure there is a shared representation at author time, where you can collaboratively use multiple tools, and that's clearly spelled out into the charter, because we're in 2023, guys, so we do expect to be able to work concurrently on a scene with multiple tools or multiple vendors. That's one agenda, and so the format needs to support that, multiple tool authoring, multiple concurrent authoring, and then we're hopeful we can't predict what kind of runtime platform we'll have tomorrow. Somebody can come up with the technology is going to revolutionize the way you play back real-time 3D and render 3D content. I don't know, some neural rendering thing. But what we hope to standardize is ways that you can take the shared authoring representation and convert it optimally into a platform specific. So that cooking and baking process is part of our thinking. It's a bit later down the road. I think, once we try to drive agreement around authoring a shared authoring solution, then you can start to think about, methodologies to turn that content into something that's suitable for each and every platform. Remember the early days of the mobile internet? You were uploading HTML5 to those servers. They were spitting out mobile. No, you guys are too young. They were spitting out mobile HTML. When we had flip phones and trying to access the web on it. So, there were a solution back in the days to do this. I think initially we're going to do that. Maybe one day you have a universal 3D representation that renders optimally everywhere. But that's not our assumption that we're going to have that anytime soon. So we're going to be working on trying to converge those things. All right. I want to be mindful of time, as and Zeno said. So I kind of put this slide together to get us talking. So they're legacy, so let's call them legacy solutions, but they are existing solutions. They're good, but you can't do much with them. This is not going to cut. They're not going to make the cut for the future. So those legacy solutions are legacy. As I said, the expectation is a much, much higher quality for next generation systems. The industry and everybody's coming together, the tools maker and everything. So to solve this interoperability problem. So there will be solutions for some of the core bricks we discussed, like rigs and deformers and chips, but they're not in place today. And so it makes the topic of character. If you wanted to make decisions on character in 2023, I don't know what you would need to look at, because the foundation is just being built. And then, but on the other hand, the unstoppable train of AI is there, and we're seeing a rapid democratization of motion capture through markerless motion capture. You've seen, the work of Meta on codec avatars, or Unity on Ziva, or Epic on MetaHuman. I mean, with machine learning now, you can do a lot of things, but it's a domain of innovation and competition. In the life cycle of the technology, you don't start by creating your standards. People innovate and compete, and then one of them or not, emerges as some sort of de facto standard and drives conversion. But that's going to take time. And the other thing is, when we did the HIK, we said, initially we said, oh, we're going to release the characterization of the characters. That's going to be enough. And then realized, no, nobody is going to play back those characters the same way unless we publish the math. Though we publish HIK, the full body IK solver, we published it. Think of it, you had the data in the codec to play back the data. I think it's the same for, actually, it's interesting that Meta called it codec avatar, because, can you play back, full body or complex, can you derive that from description, or do you need to publish the codec and the code? In which case, you get into an open source conversation about, who's going to be the open source codec. And so there's a lot of things that we don't know, and it will pan out over the next few years. How long is it going to take? It's anybody's guess at this point. Your crystal ball is as good as mine. It could be short, it could be long. We actually do not know. So yeah, thanks for inviting me. Character, fascinating topic, and tricky topic. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain. I haven't checked the chat. I saw traffic in the chat, so let me check what was said there.
We have a question from Aditya, I guess. He says, in Unity, we find it hard to parse FBX animations in runtime as a result. We depend on BVH files for runtime processing of skeletal animations in Unity. Any thoughts on this?
Oh, no. I mean, it's the devil in the detail in those things. Yeah, BVH is the work too. I mean, look at Mixamo. You can actually runtime load a Mixamo file on any game engine right now, but you have to have all your chain. That's kind of what I was saying at the end. You have to have your characterization and your runtime well aligned. If you just do if you expect that any characterization will play back at runtime, this is not going to work. So that's why the conversation is to go way beyond. The characterization of the data has to go about an integrated solution with a codec, in my opinion. Aditya.
And
yeah, thanks for that, Marc. I think it was an amazing talk. I did have a question on what you think about VRM avatars, because I think VRM has emerged as the de facto standard because that's the way VR chat was. It was totally democratized and totally decentralized. So if every avatar system out there, whether it's a Meta or a Epic or a Unity avatar, were to expose themselves as a de facto standard as VRM avatars, at least these some of these metaverses, the virtual worlds, can have a standard interaction for VRM avatars. So your thoughts on that?
Well, I would have one question. If somebody can answer this question, can you load a Mixamo file onto those avatars? Because that would tell me that if the answer is yes, that it's aligned with what other people are doing, and therefore it's a good thing. I think if it takes, in a different direction, that what, other de facto standards, it's not a good thing. There's no point in standards to be different. So that would be, I tried to do my homework on VRM because I knew you guys were from this background. I haven't really dig deep. I apologize for that. But that would be, it would be my thing. And for me, I look at Mixamo as the one thing that has worked. And if you can drop a Mixamo character in a solution, it's likely to be a good solution, because it means that the underlying data representation is de facto aligned with what has been working for the past 15 years. So does somebody have the answer to this question? Can you drop a Mixamo animation on the VRM character? Anyway, I'll check.
Yeah, just to add, like what I have observed, any character assets that we download from Mixamo is in the extension FBX versus VRM is its own extension, right? So my understanding is like you can import the FBX directly into the engine, similarly you can import the VRM directly into the engine. So yeah, so how do you see the differences here?
Because a good solution is the solution that gives users the choice, they can use stuff and be an ecosystem where there's a bunch of tools, a bunch of solutions, and you're not, you're not left alone in the dark. That's why, my train of thoughts goes into these directions.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, but yeah, thank you, Mark. This is a really eye-opening session, like a lot of new insights. Yeah, thank you for sharing all the knowledge and insights. One question I had was on the scripting side, you mentioned USD was comparable to HTML, and we are looking into the JavaScript side of things. So I know like Epic has an initiative called the View. Is there any other initiative that is being directed towards the scripting side of things at the moment?
Well, there are a lot of existing scripting solutions, starting with, C# bindings or Python or a bunch of other things. Tim Sweeney reached the conclusion that, and it was a tough decision for Epic because it's a lot of work, that because of the inherent nature of the metaverse when content will be persistent, that you probably need a new language, because no language can honor the promise that if you write a line of code in 2023, it will still run in 2053. And that was basically the premise. What we think is needed for the metaverse. I mean, you're going to put out content there; it's going to be there forever, and you're going to have to edit content while millions of people are using it and version it and rev it under those conditions. So that's why Tim reached the conclusion that it's not something you can do with some of the existing languages. It's not about syntax or performance. I mean, it's just about the core architecture. And I mean, I won't get into detail, but the way memory is managed, or just, so there was a need to build on top of that premise. And that's what, Epic is giving a go at it. And we hired a few smart people. And Mr. Sweeney has been hard at work himself. And but we do expect to see many other, or we hope to see many other solutions, and then that the right solution will emerge from, a lot of trial and error, a lot of people working together, a lot of tests, so that we end up with something that works. What we want to end up with is something that's open source, and that's implicit commitment behind Verse from Epic is that it would be open source in due course, because if you don't want to go too early, I mean, it's all very tactical consideration. But at the end of the day, we want to make shit happen, and we don't feel it should happen in 50 years. So we're treating this line about being efficient and being fully open. So,
but yeah, thank you for the information again. So we have 5 more minutes. So yeah, if anyone else have any questions, please raise your hand or mention to the chat. We'll call you out. I don't see any hands. Like one other thing that caught my attention was the discussion that you guys were talking about the rigid bodies and even the shared shaders. Like, what is the timeline that you would estimate for both of them to see it in practice?
Very interesting question. I think, I think the material stuff, we're probably there already, even if we don't quite know it, but I think it's all the concepts aren't, well, it's a matter of, so that's why I say it's the horizon is weeks. In next, hopefully before SIGGRAPH. For the physics stuff, and for me, I'm like trying to put some pressure on the system because, you can discuss forever, but there's a moment you need to put your foot down and move on to something else. So I'm, we're using SIGGRAPH as a milestone. And hopefully we try to, it's all, I mean, we always know about the mind focusing capabilities of a good milestone, I basically told the physics guy they're going to speak up, they're going to announce something at SIGGRAPH, so figure it out. So hopefully by then we get something and it's the thing, you could talk forever, I mean, on the endless variation and subtlety of those topics, but so it's difficult into an open, quote unquote, democratic forum to try to drive an execution mindset. That's what's trying to do in the domain working group is to, we are there to get shit done as fast as possible because it's not fun. There's not a lot at stake. But engineers, it takes time for them to make their minds.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Mark. Very exciting. We do have one more question. If you can answer that in like a minute, I'll leave the last 2 minutes for wrapping up. So the question is, any thoughts on when we can see AI-generated dynamic conversations between avatars?
Oh, I saw that at GDC. There's a company called InWorld. I mean, I'll probably, there's only one I know of. There's probably a gazillion out there too. Working on mixing conversational AI and all that stuff. But yeah, there was a presentation by John Gaeta, the guy who did the Matrix, and Neil Stephenson at GDC about this project, InWorld.ai. So check it out. It's okay. I mean, it's like this. It's the early days. You remember the Palm Pilot and the iPhone? No, you're way too young. But it's things are a continuum. So it's good, a very promising start. InWorld, sorry, I'm gonna write it in the chat.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Mark.